So the first question I want to ask is, what is the best concert you have ever been to? What is the best concert experience of your life? Maybe it was like the Philharmonic, or maybe it was, some other concert. But for me, it was a concert that I went to in Detroit, Michigan in 1990. I will never forget seeing U2 live in concert. And as Bono was singing those lines, all that you fashion, all that you make, all that you build, all that you break, all that you measure, all that you steal, all this you can't leave behind. I swear I felt like a different person walking out of that auditorium. Here's the next question. What's the most memorable show you have ever been to? A Broadway show, or maybe you're a director of a play, or maybe it's a small town community theater, but what's the best show you've ever been to? And again, for me, it was a show that I saw in 1990. I saw Les Miserables here in San Francisco. I was actually living in Utah at the time. San Francisco, this big city, but I got to get at-will tickets. And I will never forget at the end of that show, as they all sang, "At the end of the day, you're another day older." And I was a different person after leaving that theater. All right, here's the third question of the morning. What is the best restaurant you have ever been to? What's the best culinary experience you've ever been to? The best culinary experience I've ever been to, a little restaurant on the East Bay called the French Laundry. No, I've never been there. I like American Laundry, and I always do my own. No, but the best restaurant that I've ever been to was a little fish and chips shop in Scotland. It cost us like $5 or £5. My wife Star and I had it. We were so hungry, but we'll never forget that meal. So I want to hear about your answers to those three questions. But here's what I'm guessing that your answers are not about. Your best concert, your best show, your best restaurant was not necessarily about the excellence of what was happening. Again, it might have been just like a fish and chips shop. It might have been, again, like a high school play. Second, it was probably not something you had done before. It was not a tradition. It was not a custom in your life. It is not something that you'd ever gone through. Third, it was probably not about the place. Again, San Francisco was a cool place to see Les Mis, but frankly, I could have seen it in Stockholm or in New York or in Puyallup, Washington. So it wasn't about the place. And I bet your best of those three things was not about money, because we all know that you can spend a whole lot on something and it's not that great. It's not about money. And I'm also guessing that it also wasn't about company, the people you were with. Now, maybe it was. Maybe they augmented that experience, but what I'm talking about, the greatest experience, I bet it was about three things that I want to talk about. See, because I believe that all of the great experiences of our lives have three main factors. Number one, there is a spirit about them. It's a spiritual experience. And yes, a meal, a concert, a show, it can be a spiritual experience. It can be a thing that God does in your life. Second, I bet that the main experience, the experience of your life was authentic. There was a truth to it. It was real. You walked out saying that I experienced something that was concrete. And finally, and this is most important, it was about you. It was about you at that moment in your life when you experienced something, you were perhaps open to something happening bigger than you. So here's my biggest question of the morning, and it's the theme. What's the greatest worship experience of your life? What's the greatest worship service you could ever remember? What was the time that you and your soul and God aligned, that the universe somehow came together in one worship service? Now, I asked my staff in my session this last week, and here are just some of their great answers. And you may not know these people if you don't go to this church. It's totally okay, but just listen to their answers. Sonu, our facilities coordinator, she said that her favorite worship experience was a Taizé worship service. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Taizé worship service, but it is a beautiful meditative service where you might sing something like, Ubi caritas, Ubi caritas. And you were saying that again and again, and after an hour, you feel God. Our organist, our amazing organist, Peter Basford, who has worshiped in many traditions, said that the greatest worship experience of his life was the black church. He got the opportunity to lead a black choir, and he said this quote, "It was where worship was felt. It was in the gut." We all have had that experience, and if you haven't, please worship in a black church sometime. Court, our classic music director, had a really interesting answer. He said that the best worship experiences of his life were actually memorial services. In this congregation and in others, he talked about one at Menlo Park Press, where an entire family had tragically died, all 9 members of the family, and that there was something spiritual in that moment. And then my former clerk of session, Deb Conklin, she talked about a time that she went to a worship service where everybody's hands were held high, there was a freedom to sway, there was the Spirit in the room, and when she said that, I knew that she probably wasn't talking about a Presbyterian church. But she was talking about a charismatic worship experience. It's about the Spirit that is moving in a person's heart and their life. It's about truth. It's about walking out and saying that was real, that was authentic. And then finally, it was about them. It was about their decision to walk into a worship service that day and just say, Lord, do something in my heart right now.